Okay. Okay. So apparently, all right, here we go. All right, so we're going to get started and just play the video. And this is, again, super accredited person. He's a doctor. And apparently he's obsessed. He's obsessed with, he stumbled into a lecture, and he's giving his account of the main points of the lecture like somewhere around like 10 or 15 years later. So he went to the lecture in 1968, and it was on like someone on the inside of New World Order agenda, whatever. Um, and now it was so traumatic, I guess he had to go on tape to like recount some of the key points. But this is, I just want to recap for everybody who's joining. This is a very, very interesting perspective because we've heard it all before. We've heard about the New World Order, but I think this is definitely a new take on some key insights. So 1 of 4. So everybody is joining in the chat. I can hear you typing.
Well, what's up, y'all? Yeah, I type like a receptionist all loud, huh?
I know you're like so loud. Okay.
I take out my frustration on my keyboard.
I'm dropping frames. Oh no, I'm sorry.
It looks fine on my end. Anybody else out there see Layla dropping frames? How's she coming across to you guys?
Okay, I'm gonna get it together. Okay, so we're getting into this lecture. So everybody on Instagram.
It says the New World System. Oh, sorry.
It's called the New World System. Yeah, and again, how did you find these tapes? Like,
like I said, I mean, I could take credit for it just by being like a curious investigator or whatever, but honestly, I don't know. I couldn't even tell you how these. It's like I said, God kind of sometimes just grants you when you work hard. You know, and these just fell right in my lap, and it was just too many coincidences. I was like, holy hell, Pittsburgh, and then I started listening to it. I'm like, this totally adds up. It makes so. And it says right here, the New World System revealed by Dr. Day, an Illuminati initiative in 1969. As related by Dr. Dunnigan and transcribed by Randy Engel. So yeah, I have the transcripts for it too and everything. He works at Pittsburgh Pediatric Society. Dr. Lawrence Dungeon. Here, I'll just read the quick intro. This is a transcript of the 3 tapes on the New World Order of Barbarians, referred to on the tapes simply as the New World System. Tapes 1 and 2 were recorded in 1988 and are the recollections of Dr. Lawrence Dunnigan regarding a lecture he attended on March 20th, 1969 at a meeting of the Pittsburgh Pediatric Society. The lecturer at the gathering of pediatricians identified the tape was Dr. Richard Day, who died in 1989. At the time, Dr. Day was professor of pediatrics at Mount Sinai Medical School in New York. Previously, he had served as medical director of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Oh. Dr. Dunnigan was formerly a student of Dr. Day at the University of Pittsburgh and was well acquainted with him, though not intimately. He describes Dr. Day as an insider of the order, and although Dr. Dunnigan's memory was somewhat dimmed by the intervening years, he is able to provide enough details of the lecture to enable any enlightened person to discern the real purposes behind the trends of our time. This is a transcript of a loose conversational monologue that makes for better listening than reading. So there we go.
I know. So it's interesting. And it's good because we never really get their perspective of things. Like we get people from the outside looking in, putting things together. Like even Behold a Pale Horse, he was like reading a very like analytical perspective, like just like we're going to do this and this and this. But you don't get their like actual, like their thinking process, like how they feel about what they're doing. Because I mean,
and especially not ahead of time before it happens. We always get the, oh, this describes what we're at.
And he mentions that people only notice things. Okay, so sorry.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
Without further ado, folks.
Yes. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, Instagram, we're about to start. So join on YouTube. I'm going to leave this up for a few more minutes, but definitely join. The link is in the story. Okay. So let's get in. I know it's like.
I love it. That gets me pumped.
I know, it's so real.
Truth through the lies. Truth through the lies. Yeah. See the other side.
I know, it's a party. It's Saturday.
This is hard. We should get Julius to rap on top of it and kill it.
I
Give us an
know,
intro.
seriously. Okay, let us know if the volume works for you and you can hear everything.
Yeah, everybody, give us feedback out there. Be our eyes and ears. Let us know how it's
Yeah.
translating to you guys.
Yeah, because we just want to make sure you can hear everything clear enough and the audio sounds good.
We can adjust on our end if it's not good. If it's
Dr.
low or
Duncan.
anything, we can adjust.
All right.
This is a dope intro song.
3 tapes on the New Order of Barbarians, referred to on these tapes as simply the New World System. Tapes 1 and 2 are reminiscence by Dr. Lawrence Dunnigan of a speech given on March 20th, 1969 by an insider of the order, whose names and credentials are given in the interview with Dr. Dunnigan on tape 3. The moderator for these tapes is Randy Engel, National Director, U.S. Coalition for Life.
There has been much written and much.
I love it. You know when you hear,
National Director.
you know when you hear like that sort of, PBS sort of intro, it's gonna be like really disturbing, probably.
Yeah, this is my kind of info. This is like just like dry. You
I
don't need to
know.
put the Hollywood spin on it. It's already gonna sell itself.
Exactly. Okay. I hope you
people.
guys. Yeah, I hope you guys can see everything. Just let us know in the comments if it's working well.
Julie said we're all clear. He got our back.
Nice. Yeah, I need to make him a moderator. Like once.
Conspiracy of sorts, which influences, indeed controls, major historical events, not only in the United States but around the world. This conspiratorial interpretation of history is based on people making observations from the outside, gathering evidence, and coming to the conclusion that from the outside they see a conspiracy. Their evidence and conclusion are based on evidence gathered in retrospect, period. I want to now...
Okay, and you can tell this is authentic just from, like, historically, it's not from the present day, obviously, just from the way they speak. Like, no one could recreate this. I'm sorry.
It reeks of the 1980s. That's all I'll say. It just reeks of the 1980s. It feels authentic.
Describe what I heard from the speaker in 1969, which in several weeks will now be 20 years ago.
Oh, damn. This is 20 years later.
That's 30 years after the 80s. So we're about 50 years, half a century since this. Think of how long ago this is, guys.
This is crazy.
And look at the world as ends up summing up.
The timelines. Let's just say the timelines run a lot longer than we expect.
He did not speak in terms of retrospect, but rather predicting changes that would be brought about in the future. The speaker was not looking from the outside in, thinking that he saw conspiracy. Rather, he was on the inside, admitting that indeed there was an organized power, force, group of men who wielded enough influence to determine major events involving countries around the world. And he predicted, or rather expounded on changes that were planned for the remainder of this century. As you listen, if you can recall the situation, at least in the United States.
All right, so we're going to fast forward a little bit to get to the part where he starts to go in.
He's it's a little slow to pick up.
And nobody take notes, which for a professor was a very...
Well, listen to this kind of stuff he's saying, too. He's saying, the guy said that nobody take notes. And for a professor, that's very odd to be hearing, especially in like a medical.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just
and
odd
I do
to him right away.
Point out again the authenticity of this because you're in Pittsburgh, right? And there's another guy who is in Pittsburgh, and where is he? No, he's in Philadelphia. He's in Philadelphia, and he does this whole insider about the whole East Coast, like whole New World Order inside group. He was in it too. So it's like all up and down the East Coast. You know, it's the East Coast but it's in those general areas. And then it's also in like the West Coast is more like Hollywood focused
Hmm.
and a little bit sprinkled about, but yeah, it's mainly going to be on the East Coast where these people are.
Well,
Yeah,
it's interesting. Everybody always forgets Philadelphia was the original capital of this country. It's an important place.
Exactly. It's a very important place. It's very important.
and he hoped that we, as sort of his friends, would make the adaptation more easily if we knew somewhat beforehand what to expect. Somewhere in the
Amazing.
introductory remarks, he insisted that nobody have a tape recorder and that nobody take notes, which for a professor was a very remarkable kind of thing to expect from an audience. Something in his remarks suggested that there could be negative repercussions against him if it became widely known what he was about to say to our group. If it became widely known that indeed he had spilled the beans, so to speak. When I first heard that, I thought maybe that was sort of an ego trip, somebody enhancing his own importance.
No, it wasn't an ego trip.
But as the
They kept
Well,
it pretty well
revelation
secret. They kept it
unfolded,
secret for a while. I mean, nobody
I
really
began to understand why he
was
might
thinking
have
about
think
had
of the
some
odds of me
concern
stumbling upon this. Like
about
nobody's seen this.
not
Maybe
having
100
it
views and
widely
stuff.
known
This
what
is
was
not
said.
popular.
No.
Although this was a fairly public forum where he was speaking, remarks were delivered, but nonetheless he asked that no notes be taken, no tape recorder be used, suggested I made it a point to try to remember as much of what he said as
So this is going off of like memory. That's how impactful this whole thing was. He's literally just going
Yep.
off memory 20 years later. Like, come
Well, he
on.
also wrote down a little bit on like pieces of napkin. He said like just tiny bits because again he wasn't supposed to, and he
Uh-huh.
managed to keep those napkins for 20 some years because that's how significant it was. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like this, and then he starts talking at some point about he's taking his son to like a movie, and it's super graphic. Like the first scene, this guy's head gets blown off, and it's very vivid and stuff. And he's like, "This is exactly what he." I don't want to give it away, folks. But yeah.
Okay. So
And
he
by the way,
sees it.
one more disclaimer:
Yeah.
it takes a little while to like for him to really get the ball rolling. But just realize he's not talking like he sounds like he's a slow old man. This is a doctor that's very calculated, and he's laying out the plot. So just bear with it, and it's going to roll out, and you're going to appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's why it's good we're all watching this, because watching it, like listening to this by yourself, it's like easy to tune out because honestly the way they speak, they don't speak in modern, like they speak differently. And they're just slow paced. Like it's much better to like watch it together and like comment on it than try to like listen just like this is something, if you were trying to like listen like a podcast, you would totally tune it out and be like, what happened? Like,
Right. Well, it doesn't have any of the pizzazz. It's a very
no.
like dry delivery. But guess what? That's where the sauce is often hidden. So
Literally, we have to realize that sometimes it's not going to be like an over the top Pepsi commercial.
about
and just realize your boy C3
not
listened
having
through all
it
this boring
widely
stuff. I
known
actually like
what
this stuff. I'm telling you guys, it's worth it. It's good.
I know, right?
was said. Although this was a fairly public forum where he was speaking, remarks were delivered, but nonetheless he asked simple events around me, both to aid my memory for the future, in case
Okay,
I
he's
wanted
writing
to,
on the napkins.
having to do with
Ah.
change.
Okay,
people,
here he goes. Here, this is where he gets started. Okay.
which it asked. At this point, so that I don't forget to include it later, I'll just include some statements that were made from time to time throughout the presentation. Just having a general bearing on the whole presentation.
Okay.
One of the statements was having to do with change. People get used, the statement was, people will have to get used to the idea of change. So used to change that they'll be expecting change. Nothing will be permanent. This often came out in the context of a society of where people seem to have no roots or or moorings,
Think how important this
but
is.
would be passively willing to accept change simply because that was all they had ever known.
Okay, that was the first, like, really, really critical, important piece. And I'm glad he started off with that. Because if we look at all of these agendas, they're literally designed to destabilize us. We're not going to have routine. We're not going to have consistency. We're not going to have family. We're not going to have religion. We're not going to have even a gender identity. Like
I know, right?
nothing will be stable. And at any time, like, what is 1984? What are they doing now with changing the dictionary? At any time, they can just change history. They can just change the definition. They can change everything.
Layla, I'm so glad you bring that up because he gets into that in this where he talks about, I believe he's a Christian, by the way, and he says that one of their plans is that they've slowly changed words in the Bible over time that are very similar, so as to not really seem like it's a significant change, but it's actually putting a whole different spin on it. I don't want to give it away, folks, but this is serious evidence that if you've ever looked into these kind of things with any legitimacy, you'll start to realize pretty quickly this guy. There's no way this is just like some science fiction bullshit he thought up.
I know.
It predicts what happens, what's happening right now.
Literally. So yeah, the change thing. Let's listen to that one more time because it's really, listen. And again, this is going to be like a lecture style. We're analyzing this. It's not going to be popping off like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. It's not like that. This is investigation. This is scholarship. Okay. No, but this
serious analytics. Serious analytics. Like, we're going to critique this. And like, to Layla and I, we wanted to say the reason we want to break this all down is because we're solution oriented. Yeah. We want to figure out their game plan so that we can counter it.
And not from the surface level, like, oh my God, look what they're doing. It's what are the motivations even behind what they're doing? Because if you don't even know that, you can't really anticipate or counteract them fully. You know, if it's just, oh, get rid of gender ideology or CRT and that will solve things. No, they'll come up with something else to destabilize people if they don't understand.
Well, that's such a great point because you'll never see the big picture for what it is if you don't understand what they're working towards, what the end games are. It makes sense once you start to realize the end games.
Yep, exactly. Okay, let's
listen. If indeed it followed the predicted pattern, which it has. At this point, so that I don't forget to include it later, I'll just include some statements that were made from time to time throughout the presentation, just having a general bearing on the whole presentation. One of the statements was having to do with change. People get used. The statement was people will have to get used to the idea of change. So used to change that they'll be expecting change. Nothing will be permanent. This often came out in the context of a society of where people seem to have no roots or moorings, but would be passively willing to accept change simply because that was all they had ever known. This was sort of in contrast to generations of people up until this time where certain things you expect to be and remain in.
Yeah, and honestly, I was just like looking up some content for my like feminism videos that I'm making, and in the book, it's literally, the booklet is made by this company called Dropbox, and it's their like internal artwork, like e-zine or whatever. And in the book is called Propaganda of Feminism, by the way. So it was really easy for me
Propaganda
to
fluent feminism?
Propaganda of feminism. Like, and in the book they're like, oh, we're gonna call everybody Women X, like Women X, like with the X in the middle.
Like Latinx.
Yeah, but Women X, like
Women
X, and they're like, oh, you know, we're evolving our language as we learn and grow. So it's like literally, it's like it's already in their culture. Like the woke mob is so used to change, they expect, oh, this is the new rule. This is the new rule. This is how you should view things. They're already tuned into it 100%.
They're all about they'll accept it right away and run with it.
Exactly, because it's their religion.
Points for your life. So change was to be brought about, change was to be anticipated and expected and accepted, no questions asked.
There it is.
Another comment that
No
was
questions
made
asked, for real.
from time to time during the presentation was people are too trusting. People don't ask the right questions. Sometimes being too trusting was equated with being too dumb.
Okay, I know we're gonna stop through a lot of this
We
because
have to. Everything is
we have
bars.
to.
It's all bars throughout. Always making these
Literally,
bars.
literally all bars. But you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that if you were just listening randomly. But no, so I love that he brought up the point people don't ask the right questions.
Yeah,
Like,
that's really what
honestly.
it's about. Because like you were saying before, last on the live we did yesterday or whenever that was.
Yeah.
Propaganda's goal is to camouflage the ultimate end goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like
Exactly.
that.
And you have to ask the right questions to like figure it out. But people
So
are just asking.
they try to send you down the path of asking the wrong questions,
Yeah.
never asking the right one.
Yeah, they're
It's
always
essentially-
reacting. Yeah. Okay.
But sometimes when he would say that and say people don't ask the right questions, it was almost with a sense of regret, as if he were uneasy with what he was a part of and wished that people would challenge it and maybe not be so trusting. Another comment that was repeated from time to time, this particularly in relation to changing laws and customs and specific changes. He said everything has two purposes. One is the ostensible purpose, which will make it acceptable to people. And second is the real purpose, which would further the goals of establishing the new system. And
Again.
Layla, bars.
I know. It's literally. This is like, that summarizes what everyone on this planet needs to realize. Literally. There's one purpose that's the overt, like the outward purpose, the outward goal that the propaganda is telling you. And then there's the actual real purpose beneath it. And they make it so easy to consume. They make it so like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, of course. Oh, we're going to lock down all of our businesses to stop the spread of diseases. That totally makes sense. That's never happened ever in the history of time. But I'm guessing it's going to work now. You know, it's like...
You can't make it up.
You can't. And so that, I love the way he puts that. I love the way he puts that.
This is a very smart guy.
He is. And I'm glad he has such a good memory.
Me too.
Frequently he would say there's specific changes, describing some particularly offensive changes. For example, the promotion of drug addiction, which will...
Oh,
there we go.
Oh God. Like, what? Can he stop for a second? It's like...
No other way. There's just no other way. This seemed to come as sort of an apology, particularly when at the conclusion of describing some particularly offensive changes. For example, the promotion of drug addiction, which we'll get into shortly. He was very active with population control groups.
It's called harm reduction, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's what it's called.
Did you hear what he just said too? Population control.
Yeah. Of course he's going to have to get into the population control. That's like the ultimate agenda of all agendas. Like everything
he hits
comes
all
from
the tenets, Layla, all of them. He checks all the boxes. You will be amazed. Like literally, I have the transcript and I think he wrote it out at one point. It's like chapter, just every tenet of the freaking New World Order 101.
The population control movement, and population control was really the entry point into specifics following the introduction. He said the population is growing too fast. Numbers of people living at any one time on the planet must be limited, or we will run out of space to live. We will outgrow our food supply, and we will overpollute the world with our waste. People won't be allowed to have babies just because they want to, or because they are careless.
We'll wait for this part.
And honestly, okay, let's finish this because I have some
let's take some notes as we listen for a little bit. But also, I just want to say, like, what he gets into right here is fascinating, where he's talking about making sex a act that's not associated with pregnancy, and making pregnancy an act that's not associated with sex. He's talking about synthetically producing babies without men and women needing.
That was
Just
not
get ready,
even.
folks.
Oh, we got a super chat. Oh, here we go. Let's.
Damn, you better split that with me. Simple.
I know. I know. Okay,
I kid. I
so
kid.
Doom Guy 83. Layla, you are amazing. You're on the truth and beautiful and amazing. Marry me, and I have the best guest. You are amazing and so tuned with the future. God bless. God bless. God
Yes,
bless.
amazing. God bless
Get the
you,
truth
bro.
out here. Get the truth out here.
Sipping ain't
Okay.
easy. Amazing, bro. Thank you for the $20 to Layla, though. She deserves it.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Send
Yeah.
any more that you feel fit.
Everybody, like this video when you come in, please. We've got 18 people watching, 15 likes. Like, I'm a new channel. We're new to this whole thing. So definitely like it so other people can see this stuff. Like, they need to see it.
You got New World Order explained. You got men sipping over Layla. What more could you want out here, folks? This is a show.
I can't. We're trying to make this dry video as entertaining as possible. Like,
Oh,
literally.
man, you can't make it up. You can't write that. Thank you, Doom.
Families
comic
would be
levity.
limited to 2. Some
He's a
people
real
would be
one.
allowed only 1. And the outstanding person or persons might be selected and allowed to have 3. But most people would allow to have only 2 babies. That's because the zero population growth is 2.1 children per completed family. So something like every 10th family might be allowed the privilege of the 3rd baby. To me, up to this point, the word population control primarily connoted limiting the number of babies to be born. But this remark about what people would be allowed and then what followed made it quite clear that when you hear population control, that means more than just controlling births. It means control of every endeavor of the entire world population.
People think we're playing, man, when I say this shit about the New World Order.
I love how he dropped that. He's like, people think population control, and it's just birth. No, it's literally every aspect of your life. Like,
he summed it up beautifully.
He's trying to explain, like, that's another thing. Like, people don't ask the question, okay, what does population control really mean? You have an image already in your head. Oh, it's to reduce birth rates, or, oh, it's to make it so there's not so many people on the planet. No, it has a bigger meaning than that, but people aren't asking that question, even now.
Well, see, there was lately, if they were just trying to, like, minimize the population so we didn't overburden our ecosystem, they would call it population sustainability. But see, the control is the key word there. They want control of everything.
A much broader meaning to that term than I had ever attached to it before hearing this.
Yeah.
As you listen and reflect back on some of the things you hear, you will begin to recognize how one aspect dovetails with other aspects in terms of controlling human endeavors. Well, from population control, a natural next step then was sex.
Boom. Here we go.
He said sex must be separated from reproduction. Sex is too pleasurable and the urges are too strong to expect people to give it up. Chemicals in food and in the water supply to reduce the sex drive are not practical. The strategy.
Where do you, like, Behold the Pale Horse didn't even get into this.
Layla, here, listen to what he's about to say, how they go about it. It's so devious.
Then would be not to diminish sex activity, but to increase sex activity, but in such a way that people won't be having babies. And the first consideration then here was contraception. Contraception would be very strongly encouraged, and it would be connected so closely in people's minds with sex that they would automatically think contraception when they were thinking or preparing for sex.
Think about that.
And
our whole lives I thought that.
contraceptives would be made
universally
available. Nobody wanting contraception would be find that they were unavailable. contraceptives would be displayed much more prominently in drugstores and right up with the cigarettes and the chewing gum out in the open, rather than hidden under the counter where people would have to ask for them and maybe be embarrassed. This kind of openness was a way of suggesting that contraceptives are just as much a part of life as any other item sold in the store. And contraceptives would be advertised.
So what he's doing then, so what he's saying is they're going to make sex and contraception synonymous. And then on top of that, they're going to normalize it. We don't understand the real impact of normalization. Like when you make something okay socially, you open the floodgates. Like then people are like, okay, let's go. So just those simple things really radically change how people use a product and how it's perceived.
Well, they associated sex with. Think of how mind flipping they were able to. This is unbelievable. They were able to like foresee this and pull this off. Actually, that throughout all of human history, having sex was associated with pregnancy, producing a child, a baby. And nowadays, at least my whole life, they've been teaching us contraceptives. Make sure you never have a baby when you have sex. You can have all the sex you want, but just make sure you're safe about it and never have a kid. Safe is not having a kid. So wait, it goes even further here. This is not even the most devious part. This is the first half of the more evil part. Dude, let's keep listening. I could talk for days.
Contraceptives would be dispensed in the schools in association with sex education. The sex education was to get kids interested early, making the connection between sex and the need for contraception early in their life.
Okay. I'm sorry I have to pause this one more time, but when we have later conversations about this whole thing, starting early, put it in the school. End of story.
Yeah, exactly. End of story.
That's the only purpose of putting any of this stuff in the school is to get the kids into it early so they can't divorce themselves from it so easily.
Brainwashing 101.
Yeah.
At this point, I was recalling some of my teachers, particularly in high school, and found it totally unbelievable to think of them agreeing to, much less participating in distributing contraceptives to students. But that only reflected my lack of understanding of how these people operate. That was before the school-based clinic programs got started. Many cities in the United States by this time have already set up school-based clinics, which are primarily contraception, birth control, population control clinics. The idea then is that the connection between sex and contraception introduced and reinforced in school would carry over into marriage. Indeed, if young people, when they matured, decided to get married, marriage itself would be diminished in importance. He indicated some recognition that most people probably would want to be married, but that this certainly would not be any longer considered to be necessary for sexual activity. No surprise then that the next item was abortion. And this, now back in 1969, 4 years before Roe v. Wade, he said abortion will no longer be a crime.
Bars.
Dude, I mean, every fucking sentence, every statement is just like.
I know, this is insane. Like,
I mean, he's smacking grand slams out the park. He's batting 100.
Literally, it's just every single agenda rolled out.
Think about this. He's been thinking about this shit for like 20 years, and this is the opportunity he's been given as he's watched this all manifesting come to be more and more. At first, he was in disbelief. He's like, "What the hell is this guy talking about?" And it's just come to be. And now at this point, he's had a chance to collect his thoughts, and this is an opportunity to put some shit on the record once and for all. I have to say something for my conscience. I'm sure that's what he was thinking. I must say something for my conscience, and hopefully, this maybe have a chance at like influencing this not to come about. But it sounds. I mean, can't imagine he thought he had much hope with that.
I know, and we're listening to it now in 20.
Well, I'm going to do it for you, buddy. We're going to make it happen. We're taking the torch and running from here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, bro.
Would be accepted as normal and would be paid for by taxes for people who could not pay for their own abortions. Contraceptives would be made available by tax money so that nobody would have to do without contraceptives. If school sex programs would lead to more pregnancies in children, that was really seen as no problem.
Watch this part.
Parents who think they are opposed to abortion on moral or religious grounds will change their minds when it is their own child who is pregnant. So this will help overcome opposition to abortion. Before long, only a few die.
Damn. He's literally beating it into them. He's forcing them to accept
It's so
it.
sadistic, man. It's so sadistic. Think about that. Their programs in school for the children and sex are going to encourage pregnancy, so that they therefore then have to get their kids an abortion and become an abortion advocate.
Damn.
This is so sadistic, man.
That's some 5D chess.
Right. It's throughout all this too. It's so wild. It is so wild.
Yeah. Because again, you have to have your behavior has to match your previous behavior. Like your thoughts and actions have to match up. Otherwise you have like cognitive dissonance. So if they do the abortion, then it's, or God, we're going to get flagged for this. If they do the act,
let's call it the, yeah.
Well, he says it anyway. I can edit it, and what I'll do is I'll edit it and re-upload, so because otherwise we don't get we get censored if we say those.
You know what? Even that is proof of what this man is about to go on to tell you folks. Like, we can't even say certain words out here. They're so protected. What? Who's to say the context of it? You know why they do that? Because there's nobody ever putting that A word in good context because it's bad.
They
just have to censor it. Period. They just have to censor it. Period. Like, just don't let any conversations about that go on because there's no merits of it that will be out there. So we'll just censor everything. But hey, John in the chat said they did what was right in their own eyes. See, my friend, that's an easy way for evil to justify evil, and I don't like that. That's not. I don't agree.
Soren Mass says it's not 5D chess. It's just thinking 10 moves ahead. And having the means to move the pieces. But yeah, but people don't
potato
think, they don't think in that way. People don't think in long term. They don't think in like systems. They don't think in systems thinking. They don't think in these complex ways. They only think about what am I going to do next or what did society tell me to do. And Club Rico podcast mentions this is pretty ingenious manipulation. I agree. This is
it's pretty ingenious by the beta losers of New World Order. I give them credit.
Will still refuse to see abortion as acceptable, and they won't matter anymore. Homosexuality also was to be encouraged. People will be given permission to be homosexuals. That's the way it was stated. They won't have to hide it. And elderly people will be encouraged to continue to have active sex lives into their very old ages as long as they can.
All these gross old ladies out here.
Everyone will be given permission to have sex, to enjoy however they want. Anything goes. This is the way it was put. And I remember thinking how arrogant for this individual or whoever he represents to feel that they can give or withhold permission for people to do things. But that was the terminology that was used. In this regard, clothing was mentioned. Clothing styles would be made more stimulating and provocative. Recall back in 1969 was the time of the miniskirt when they were those miniskirts were very, very high and very revealing. He said it's not just the amount of skin that is exposed that makes clothing sexually seductive, but other more subtle things are often more suggestive.
The shaping, the figure.
Things like movement and the cut of clothing and the kind of fabric, the positioning of accessories on the clothing. If a woman has an attractive body, why should she not show it, was one of the statements.
Amazing.
There's was not detail on what was meant by provocative clothing, but since that time, if you watch the changes in clothing styles, blue jeans are cut in a way that they're much more tight-fitting through the crotch. They form wrinkles. Wrinkles essentially are arrows, lines which direct one's vision to certain anatomy.
Gosh, okay. I want to.
No.
I want to shout out Club Rico. Sent a super sticker. Thank you.
Thank you, Rico.
Hippo's character head pops out of water. Oh, that's just a caption. I'm like, oh, the super sticker. But yeah, no. This is like, this is very detailed. This is giving you the like background, the detail, every single like nuance, because people do not think like this. They think, oh, it's just showing more skin. No, it's the way the fabric's cut. It's the way things, the attention to detail, like every single aspect is controlled because these people understand visual communication. They
And it's been
understand.
sexualized as possible for men.
Yeah. Yeah.
As
Oh my
like they
God.
know every which way to manipulate the men into being little sexual
And
slaves, like simps.
and also if you think about the skinny jeans for dudes,
Oh my god, I don't want to think about it, but
what
yeah.
does that call attention to? Come on. Like
Ugh. Some gross shit. That's what it calls attention
Yeah.
to.
And this was around the time of the burn your bra activity.
Burn your bra.
He indicated
You don't
that
need that bra.
a
Let
lot
them
of women
titties
should not go
fly.
without a bra. They need a bra to be attractive. So instead of banning bras and burning them, bras would come back, but they would be thinner and softer, allowing more natural movement. And it was not specifically stated, but certainly a very thin bra is much more revealing of the nipple and what else.
okay.
There was some elaboration on that, but I don't remember the details, how much of that technology has come to my attention since that time. I don't remember.
Wait, did we skip ahead or
I
something?
don't remember in a way
What
that I can
technology are you talking
distinguish
about?
what was. You would have sex without reproduction, and then technology was reproduction without sex.
There it is.
This would be done in the laboratory. Indicated already much research was underway about making babies in the laboratory. There was some elaboration on that, but I don't remember the details, how much of that technology has come to my attention since that time. I don't remember.
So he's talking about the technology, and of course, in the like 1980s or whatever, he like the end of what is this 1989 or something? He said
Late 80s, I think. Yeah, somewhere around.
late 80s. They didn't have the surrogacy. They didn't have the like the all of the new technologies related to pregnancy and giving birth. Right now, they still have to use surrogates, but soon they're gonna have the like the mechanical like AI wombs that like raise everybody.
I've already
So
seen some alleged you know, prototypes of the
yeah.
artificial womb,
Yeah,
where
the
literally
artificial
you
womb
don't
is
need no
coming.
surrogate. They're
No.
cutting the woman out too. They've cut the men out of the equation. The woman's going too. They're trying to become tech. I don't want to get too far into this for you people right now because there's a lot to unpack. But they're working towards this thing called the AI Singularity New World Order, the One World
Mm.
Government. They're trying to merge with AI and become gods, literally themselves. Androgynous gods, meaning men and women aren't to be anymore. They're not necessary, and we don't want them to have to be necessary to procreate.
Basically, this is like the origin story of the alien grays. Like we're
Layla, there's a lot of rabbit trails we could go down on this. Are legit. We should explore in other shows, but like,
yeah.
we're not even gonna be able to unpack this message alone from him. Like, we don't have time to unpack all that stuff.
Okay.
But you're right on
I
the
don't
money. You
remember
are so on the money.
Okay.
a way that I can distinguish what was said from what I subsequently have just learned as general medical information. Families would be limited in size.
Families.
We already alluded to not being allowed more than 2 children. Divorce would be made easier and more prevalent.
Boom.
Most people who marry will marry more than once.
Boom.
More people will not marry. Unmarried people would stay in hotels and even live together. That would be very common. And nobody would even ask questions about it. It would be widely accepted as no different from married people being together. More women will work outside the home. More men will be transferred to other cities in their jobs. More men would travel to work. Therefore, it would be harder for families to stay together.
Transfer to other cities, but instead they just were like, no, we'll just transfer them to another like universe. Like they'll become gamers and just like go into the gaming, going into the gaming portal.
Let's just
like
transfer them the hell out of this existence.
exactly. Like forget a city. Let's just go be a gamer. You don't.
Why don't we just put them in the metaverse, which is fake?
Yeah, exactly. So that makes it difficult to have a home.
Amazing.
This would tend to make the marriage relationship less stable. and therefore tend to make people less willing to have babies. And the extended family would be smaller and more remote. Travel would be easier, less expensive for a while, so that people who did have to travel would feel that they could get back to their families, not that they were abruptly being made remote from their families. But one of the net effects of easier divorce laws, combined with the promotion of travel and transferring families from one city to another, was to create instability in the families.
I love the creepy music in the background, like on the
I
radio.
know,
If
it's
both
so
husband and wife
disturbing.
are working
What
and one partner gets transferred, the other one may not be easily transferred. So one either gives up his or her job and stays behind while the other leaves, or else gives up the job and risks not finding employment in the new location. Rather diabolical approach to this whole thing. Euthanasia. Everybody has a right to live only so
This is
long.
coming down the pike, folks. This is coming
The old
right
are
down
no
the pike.
longer useful. They become a burden. You should be ready to accept death. Most people are. An arbitrary age limit could be established. After all, you have a right to only so many steak dinners, so many orgasms, and so many good pleasures in life. And after you've had enough of them, and you're no longer productive and working and contributing, then you should be ready to step aside for the next generation.
So sad.
This is coming on so many different angles. We already have the program in Canada where you can just sign up, get yourself taken out unalived by the government, and with government help. And then they're also pushing this on kids, where they're looking at seeing how mature children can opt for this. And then you have the rabid psycho feminist women who are basically making all these arguments around how you only exist or are valid at a certain period of your life. Like outside of that period, like if you're preborn, you have you're not valid. So they could easily flip this to say, oh, once you're old, then you're not valid either. Like, and we've already seen this so much.
Like, but what's so fucked up about that is those old people have paid their dues in most every other society in the world. By that point, they are taken care of by the tribe because they laid the foundation for the tribe, and it's honored, it's revered for the work they put in, the hard sacrifices, and all that. In this model, they're literally telling old people, you know what, all that hard work and everything you put in was fucking pointless bullshit, and now you're a waste of life that we got to get rid of, taking up space. That's awful, man.
Exactly. For anybody, this video was recorded in the late 80s. And the lecture he's talking about is 1968 is when he went to this lecture.
I'll get the exact info up again. We read it at the beginning, folks. So you can go back and watch it later, but I'll get it for you again. We'll watch it, or I'll have it for you after this.
Yeah.
So,
some things that.
Yeah, so this guy is a doctor, and I forgot the name. Yeah.
Here, I'll read it out real quick.
Yeah, read it.
This is a transcript of 3 tapes on, quote, the New Order of Barbarians, referred to on the tapes simply as the New World System. Tapes 1 and 2 were recorded in 1988 and are the recollections of Dr. Lawrence Dunnigan regarding a lecture he attended on March 20th, 1969 at a meeting of the Pittsburgh Pediatric Society. The lecturer at the gathering of pediatricians identified in tape 3 recorded in 91 was a Dr. Richard Day, who died in 1989. At the time, Dr. Day was professor of pediatrics at Mount Sinai Medical School in New York. Previously, he had served as medical director of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Dr. Dunnigan was formerly a student of Dr. Day at the University of Pittsburgh and was well acquainted with him, though not intimately. He describes Dr. Day as an insider of the, quote, order. And although Dr. Dunnigan's memory was somewhat dimmed by the intervening years, he is able to provide enough details of the lecture to enable any enlightened person to discern the real purposes behind the trends of our time. This is a transcript of a loose conversation. Yeah. So this is not a transcript. We're actually listening to the tapes of it, not the transcript. So that's the little intro.
That's some context for you, Orion. I know some new people have joined. Okay,
Yeah,
let's
maybe
get
we'll do
back
that every
into
once in a while for
it.
them. Yeah, let's get back
Would
into
help
it.
people realize that they had lived long enough. He mentioned several of these. I don't remember them all. Here are a few. The use of very pale printing ink on forms that people
Look at
necessary
this.
to fill out,
This is so
so that older
evil.
people wouldn't be able to read the pale ink as easily and would need to go to younger people for help.
That's so sad.
Automobile traffic patterns. There would be more high-speed traffic lanes, traffic patterns that older people with their slower reflexes, would have trouble dealing with, and thus tend to lose some of their independence. Big item was elaborated at some length was the cost of medical care would be made burdensomely high.
Boom.
Medical care would be
Bars.
Bars, man. Bars, Layla. Fuck.
This is ridiculous. This is
I haven't listened to this
insane.
in a minute. I forgot exactly how well detailed he goes. Oh my god.
I've never, none of my other, I mean, maybe somebody else can correct me, but I've never heard them talk about how they're just going to make medical care overly expensive so that they can start to get rid of excess people. And what are they saying about the cost of medical care in Canada? They're like, "Oh, it's expensive. Let's get rid of you instead." So,
Yeah. Well, remember, guys, this is a fucking doctor from University of Pittsburgh, which is the number one medical in the world. His credentials could not be any better. So when he's talking about the medical industry, he knows what the fuck he's talking about, okay?
literally.
Nobody else knows better.
connected very closely with one's work, but also would be made very, very high in cost, so that it would simply be unavailable to people beyond a certain time.
Oh yeah, he's even talking about this is when medical insurance wasn't even connected with your job. So he's even calling that out.
I
Like
believe he gets in. I think he even gets into how they tie it to your job and shit.
that's crazy. Like how this is the world that we do not have any concept of. We've not interacted in this world. Like we're in the new world order right now. Like
Yeah, man, they're rolling it out hard.
And unless they had a remarkably rich supporting family, they would just have to do without care. And the idea was that if everybody sees enough what a burden it is on the young to try to maintain the old people,
There it is, man. So sad.
then the young would become agreeable to helping mom and dad along the way, provided that this was done humanely and with dignity. And then the example was there could be like a nice farewell party, a real celebration. Mom and dad had done a good job. And then after the party's over, they take the demise pill. The next topic is medicine. There would be profound changes in the practice of medicine. Overall, medicine would be much more tightly controlled. The observation was made, Congress is not going to go along with national health insurance that in 1969 he said is now abundantly evident, but it's not necessary. We have other ways to control health care. These will come about more gradually, but all health care delivery would come under tight control. Medical care would be closely connected to work. If you don't work or can't work, you won't have access to medical care.
Boom.
The days of hospitals giving away free care would gradually wind down until that was virtually non-existent. Costs would be forced up so that people won't be able to afford to go without insurance. People pay. You pay for it, you're entitled to it. It was only subsequently that I began to realize the extent to which you would not be paying for it. Your medical care would be paid for by others, and therefore you would gratefully accept on bended knee what was offered to you as a privilege. Your role being responsible for your own care would be diminished. As an aside here, this is not something that was developed at that time. I didn't understand at the time. But as an aside, the way this works, everybody's made dependent on insurance. And if you don't have insurance and you pay directly, the cost of your care is enormous.
Yep.
The insurance company, however, paying for your care does not pay that
They
same
pay a
amount.
discount, a huge discount
If you
rate.
are charged, say, $600 for the use of an operating room, the insurance company does not pay $600 on your part. They pay $300 or $400. And that differential in billing has the desired effect. It enables the insurance company to pay for that which you could never pay for.
Yeah.
They get a discount that's unavailable to you. When you see your bill, you're grateful that the insurance company can do that, and in this way you are dependent and virtually required to have insurance. The whole billing is fraudulent. Anyhow, continuing on now, access to hospitals would be tightly controlled. Identification will be needed to get in.
This is an interesting one.
Security in and around hospitals would be established and gradually increased so that nobody without identification could get in or move around inside the building. Theft of hospital equipment, things like typewriters and microscopes and so forth, would be allowed, and exaggerated reports of it would be exaggerated, so that this would be the excuse needed to establish the need for strict security until people got used to it. And anybody moving about in a hospital would be required to wear an identification badge with a photograph and telling why he was there, employee or lab technician or visitor or whatever. And this is to be brought in gradually, getting everybody used to the idea of identifying themselves.
Brought in gradually, brought in gradually, brought in gradually. I cannot repeat this enough. They always bring it in gradually, and they make the reason seem sensible. It makes sense. Why would I
sensible,
not?
like noble. Like
Yes.
sometimes they'll make it out.
Yes. Why would I not wear a badge that says visitor on it? That makes totally makes sense.
Why would I not wear a mask that protects everybody else, or get a thing in my arm that? Why would I not? It's noble, you know.
Yeah.
And like they say about the old adage of that boiling frog. If you're trying to cook a frog, you don't throw them in boiling water. What you do is you put them in room temperature water and slowly bring it to boil, and that frog will sit there the whole time. It won't jump out until it's cooked. That's what they're doing to us.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Until it was just accepted. This need for ID to move about would start in small ways, hospitals, some businesses, but gradually expand to include everybody in all places. It was observed that hospitals can be used to confine people for the treatment of criminals. This did not mean necessarily medical treatment. At that time, I did not know the word psycho prison, as in the Soviet Union, but without trying to recall all the details, basically he was describing the use of hospitals both for treating the sick and for confinement of criminals for reasons other than the medical well-being of the criminal.
That's a wild admittance.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, that's
Dude,
something.
302. They call it 302, like where somebody gets psychiatrically committed to a psych ward against their will by their family members or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is happening. It happens way more frequently than you might imagine. To a lot of people that might not deserve it too, I would argue.
Yeah, if you call one of those things, they get held for 72 hours. But no, this, like, if they had the passports and they had the this and they have the that, where they can force you to take certain medications, if you don't take them, you got to go in the hospital. And the hospital is the new prison.
I'll tell you this. There's no chance in hell. I would have to be on my deathbed, certainly dying, before I offered myself up to the hospital to maybe cure me. Because I know that the second leading cause of death in the hospital is medical malpractice. Only to cancer. If you go, folks, let me clarify. If you go to the hospital, your second most likely cause to kill you, to die in there, is them. Okay? And
to unalive you. The second most leading cause to unalive you.
You want to know why that's occurring? Because they are a for-profit business, okay? You are not a patient, you are a customer, and a customer needs to be a repeating customer. Therefore, they're not in the business of curing you. They can't cure you or they would go out of business. They need to treat you. That's their program. They treat, which means perpetually coming back, and I'm not going to ever cure the symptom. I'm just going to try to manage them. And we'll give you more drugs and more treatment on top of this management because there's going to be side effects that we have to do. And it's just a compounding business.
True.
That's what it is. It's a racket, man. Don't go to those. I'd have to be on my deathbed before I decide to try. Maybe they won't maybe they won't kill me by accident is what I have to be thinking, because I'm gonna die anyway. So, maybe they won't kill me even though they mean to. Hopefully, what do I got to lose? That's the only way I'd go to hospital.
Yeah, they're gonna end they won a lot of battles, but we have to win the war, exactly.
Listen, we're going to win. God is good. Look how He's landed this in our laps to learn them. No matter, this is what I've learned. Evil's best laid, despite their best laid plans and their genius cunning, they always sow their own demise. Evil always does, always will, and this kind of stuff comes out because of it. So guys, don't lose hope at all. This is actually something worth. It's pretty cool if you ask me. It's an opportunity here, unprecedented.
I know. We're halfway through the first one. I mean, the next one's gonna be really interesting when we do that. We have to. I think this is a success, and we definitely are gonna do tape 2, 3, and 4 for sure.
Try and stop me, woman.
Definition of criminal was not given.
What? Can you go back, Tony Bate?
Whoa, the definition of criminal. Damn.
Ways, hospitals, some businesses, but gradually expand to include everybody in all places. It was observed that hospitals can be used to confine people for the treatment of criminals. This did not mean necessarily medical treatment. At that time, I did not know the word psycho prison, as in the Soviet Union, but without trying to recall all the details, basically he was describing the use of hospitals both for treating the sick and for confinement of criminals for reasons other than the medical well-being of the criminal.
Amazing.
Definition of criminal was not given.
Amazing.
This is the level we have to start thinking at. We can't just take these words for their face value, whatever we think the labels are. We have to analyze the real definition. What do these people really, really mean? Like, you can't just let it slide.
Everything that you're taught by the mainstream is a lie, and it's likely opposite the truth. Now, take that for what it's worth, but there's another agenda going on below that likely is opposite whatever they're selling you, but at the very least, it's not what they're selling you.
No.
There's ulterior agendas at work that you have to realize. When I'm told this by a mainstream source, first is a great example of this, dude. You heard it here first. That whole Chinese spy thing, there's some BS going on. I don't know what it is, but that's so nonsensical. Why on earth would they be flying a fucking satellite like that, balloon like that over there? It makes no sense, people. None.
It's preparing us for something else.
I was just going to say that, unless they're priming us for a war with China, or who knows what they're doing with this, but it is not as it seems on the surface. I'll say that much.
I agree. We got another super chat. Yes, thank you. This man spitting. Good is constructive force by nature.
Evil is a destructive force by nature.
Yeah.
He's saying they both are.
Evil is destructive force by nature, and evil of its own self cannot stand. No, I agree. Evil has to implode on itself.
That's deep, dude. I didn't expect you to come out with those bars after you came so aggressively at Layla for the marriage.
You guys,
wow, you're insightful, bro. You're insightful.
I have mega fans. You
ain't lying, girl.
I'm starting a cult. The cult.
Hey, you'll be the second, Layla. You're a little late. Remember Common Sense Cult?
Yeah, I know, right?
The only cult in the world that insists you bring your own Kool-Aid. We're not going to give you nothing. Think for yourself over in our cult.
I love it. Not many people aspire to have their own cults, but
Yeah, it's pretty cool, guys. Join my cult. On Telegram.
I know. So what's your? Throw out your Discord. Discord.
Where do I do that? I put it in the chat?
Put it in the chat, and also just tell people how to search for your Discord, because that Discord is really good.
So folks, it's on Discord, obviously. It's called Common Sense Culture. Here, I'll give you the link in the chat, and I'll put it in the comments afterwards too, so you guys can access it easily. Because I'm not sure how easily it is to find.
Yeah.
On Discord, I don't know if you could just search it and actually find it or not. I'm not sure.
That's what I did. I feel.
Okay. So what you want to do is search Common Sense Culture. Sense with C-E-N-T-S, not S-E-N-S-E.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that sense. That's very common. But SE and SE is all too uncommon.
Yeah, we'll put the link there.
Where's the link?
That's where this first dropped.
Each of the doctor would change. No longer would he be seen as an individual professional in
This is
service
deep
to
too.
individual patients, but the doctor would be gradually recognized as a highly skilled technician,
Mm-hmm.
and his job would change. The job is to include things like executions by lethal injection.
Boom.
The image of the doctor as
Stop.
being a powerful, independent person would have to be changed. And he went on to say, doctors that make entirely too much money, they should advertise like any other product. Lawyers would be advertising too. Keep in mind, this was an audience of doctors being addressed by a doctor. And it was
The audacity.
interesting that he would make some rather insulting statements to his audience without fear of antagonizing us. The solo practitioner would become a thing of the past. A few diehards might try to hold out, but most
That's deep.
doctors would be employed by an institution of one kind or another. Group practice would be encouraged, corporations would be encouraged, and then once the corporate image of medical care, as this gradually became more and more acceptable, doctors would more and more become employees rather than independent contractors. And
Damn,
along with
deep.
that, of course, unstated but necessary, is the employee serves his employer, not his patient. So that's
exactly
and
what I
we've
was
already
saying.
seen quite a lot of that in the last 20 years, and apparently more on the horizon. The term HMO was not used at that time, but as you look at HMOs, you see this is the way that medical care is being taken over since the national health insurance approach did not get through the Congress. A few diehard doctors may try to make a go of it, remaining in solo practice, remaining independent, which parenthetically is me. But they would suffer great loss of income. They'd be able to scrape by maybe, but never really live comfortably as those who were willing to become employees of the system.
They'll die
Ultimately, there
out.
would be no room at all for the solo practitioner after the system is entrenched.
God, and we have laws that they passed and that are being challenged where you can't, as a doctor, give misinformation. Basically, anything goes against the narrative. Otherwise, you're in hot water here in California. So
No
that's
kidding, Layla. I
essentially,
haven't heard of that yet. What is that?
yeah, it's in California. It's a new law that they passed, and they're already challenging it. I have to look it up. But
Amazing.
yeah, so they're trying to clamp down. We know that California sets a lot of trends too.
Oh yeah.
Next heading to talk about is health and disease. He said there would be new diseases to appear, which had not ever been seen before, would be very difficult to diagnose and be untreatable, at least for a long time. No elaboration was made on this, but I remember not long after hearing this presentation, when I had a puzzling diagnosis to make, I would be wondering, is this what he was talking about? Is this a case of what he was talking about? Some years later, as AIDS ultimately developed, I think AIDS was at least one example of what he was talking about.
I agree.
I now think that AIDS
Bars.
probably is a manufactured disease. Cancer.
Bars.
He said we can cure almost every cancer right now.
Bars.
Information is on file in the Rockefeller Institute if it's ever decided that it should be released. But consider, if people stop dying of cancer, how rapidly we would become overpopulated.
Here we go.
Wow.
Playing God. Playing God. This is their MO.
So you're saying they could cure cancer all the way back then? That's just a conspiracy theory. Oh my God.
And this folks, this is a medical doctor from the University of Pittsburgh, which is the premier medical in the world. So to say his credibility shot, I would like to see who you consider credible then.
Yeah, seriously.
And it's as credible as it gets.
He doesn't sound like some crazy dude who's running off the rails. Like,
No, not only that. Like it's just he's literally mapping out everything that has come to be, and explaining the other things that have yet to come to be in a way that just makes total sense of everything.
I know, right?
Tell me he's
You may as
lying.
well die of cancer as something else. Efforts at cancer treatment would be geared more toward comfort than toward cure. There
Wow.
was some statement that ultimately the cancer cures which were being hidden in the Rockefeller Institute would come to light because independent researchers might bring them out despite these efforts to suppress them. But at least for the time being, letting people die of cancer was a good thing to do because it would slow down the problem of overpopulation. Another very interesting thing was heart attacks. He said, there is now a way to simulate a real heart attack.
Listen to this shit.
It can be used as a means of assassination.
No.
Only a very skilled pathologist who knew exactly what to look for at an autopsy could distinguish this from the real thing.
You can't make this shit up, people.
Very surprising and shocking thing to hear from this particular man at that particular time.
Look at the fucking people, all
this business of the cancer
athletes
cure
dying,
really
folks. They're not
still
detecting
stand out
why.
sharply in my memory.
No,
They say a random heart attack.
the heart attack thing, we already know they can do that. And they can give you
They could do that.
And they can give you like rapid brain cancer. Like
Yep.
Like the brain cancer takes over like instantly.
One more deep level of that, they have this technology called, and this is in the CIA FOIA releases, this is where I got it, called the voice of God. And what they do is literally like a gun that they can shoot from I heard from miles away into somebody's cranium, and it's literal actual audio signals. It's not like they're hallucinating them or something. They're putting these real signals in their brain, and they call it the voice of God because obviously they're putting a lot of voices in these people's heads saying God knows what to what ends. But I firmly believe through my evidence that most, if not all, schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality disorder is induced by this kind of technology.
A lot of it.
It's only come about in the past same amount of time since this technology has been existent. So it just grows because they're using it more and they're making it better. It's never been around. It's not a naturally. How on earth would that be a naturally occurring state of human being? To hear voices in your head tell you to do things against your own good benefit.
It wasn't as rampant, no.
It would be that's literally the definition of unnatural. Nature survives. It lives in the environment. That is self-destructive, even of its own self.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not natural. That's not a natural state. That's induced, I would argue. And my evidence shows it.
This stuff is...
We
have to really rethink everything about how the world is constructed. Like, I don't know about the rest of you, but since I was a little kid, I was always like, is this what we're doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Same here, Layla. I always knew something stunk. I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew something stunk about all this.
Yeah, it was weird. It's just, why? Like, why would you want to leave your house for 1,000 hours to go work somewhere? Like, what? Why would you do that?
Crazy. So look at our boy Doom in the chat. He said, if Layla started a cult, I'd definitely buy one of her robe hoodies. Nice, bro.
I need a robe hoodie. Well, I'm going to be making some merch. It's going to say propaganda minister on it.
Oh, I would definitely buy that. I would definitely rock that.
You would buy that? Yeah, I think everybody would rock it. It's going to look good.
They were so shocking and at that time seemed to me out of character. He then went on to talk about nutrition and exercise.
Layla, you're going to like this one.
Framework. People would have to eat right and exercise right to live as long as before. Most won't. This in the connection of nutrition, there was no specific statement that I can recall as to particular nutrients that would be either inadequate or in excess. In retrospect, I tend to think he meant high salt diets and high fat diets would predispose toward high blood pressure and premature arteriosclerosis.
And I think he's talking about high fat diets in terms of the seed oils and all those things.
the bad, what do they call it? It's trans fats or some bullshit.
Yeah, all those bad fats. Because good fats are good for you, but what most people
Right,
consume
right.
are seed oils.
heart
Yeah.
disease, and that if people were too dumb or too lazy
Oh man, I like Soren called out most won't. Zero emotion as he says this. Dude is, I mean, because he's just so like
He's a
base.
doctor. You gotta understand.
He
Doctors
can't.
are like very straightforward, matter of fact guys because they can't afford to like dabble in emotions. It would mess them up.
No.
So doctors often have this dry delivery, but when you consider how he's all the information he's giving us in the little personal blobs he puts in there, like I remember thinking at the time how arrogant this guy was or whatever. He's not one of them. He's trying to expose it for what it's
Yeah.
worth. So
Yeah, but he doesn't have any emotion. I like that. He's just telling it like it is. I mean,
he's a G. He's a stone cold G.
yes.
to exercise as they should, then their circulating fats would go up and predispose to disease. And he said something about diet information about proper diet would be widely available, but most people, particularly stupid people who had no right to continue living anyway,
Oh, there it is.
they would ignore the advice and just go on and eat.
Layla, I know you love that part. I know that you love that.
I like, wait, he's speaking to my heart. No, I know.
I knew you would love that part.
What was convenient and tasted good. There were some other unpleasant things said about food. I just can't recall what they were, but I do remember of having reflections about wanting to plant a garden in the backyard to get around whatever these contaminated foods would be.
That's too
What?
bad. This is gonna be coming from the sky, buddy. Too bad you didn't know that
What?
yet. But there's things called chemtrails. Can't escape it.
What? You're
Hmm.
gonna have to plant gardens? Oh, but yeah, the chemtrails, they thought ahead. They thought
You didn't
ahead.
see that coming.
Yeah, you didn't see that coming. See, that's the thing. They work
Got 'em.
around. They work around. They work
They work a
around
million
you.
different angles.
Yeah.
They get us every which way. You just got to be aware. Don't trust none of it. None of them.
No.
Everything's a deceptive attack until proven otherwise. Don't believe any of that bullshit.
For the link and for the content, well, we're gonna post this live, and also for the video, we're going to. You have the link for the transcripts, right?
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat right now.
Yeah, and we can put that in the chat, and we'll have it in the description. But yeah, join his Discord, and you can get more content, like more stuff like this, more interesting
Yeah, good call, Layla.
content. Plug.
Common sense culture with the CENTS.
I regret I don't remember the details, the rest of this about nutrition and hazardous nutrition. With regard to exercise, he went on to say that more people would be exercising more, especially running, because everybody can run. You don't need any special equipment or place. You can run wherever you are. As he put it, people will be running all over the place. And in this vein, he pointed out how supply produces demand, and this was in reference to athletic clothing and equipment, as this would be made more widely available and glamorized, particularly as regards running shoes. This would stimulate people to
God,
Isn't this interesting?
Can it
Can't believe
just
it.
be like, oh, people like to wear comfortable shoes? No, they're literally part of the depopulation plan is to get running shoes. Like, what?
It's insane, Layla. It's so deep.
How does the poisoning of food relate to the rise in running shoes? Like,
Wait for it.
purchase-
Wait for it. He ties the dots. He lands the plane. It's crazy.
develop an interest in running, and as part of a whole sort of public propaganda campaign, people would be encouraged then to buy the attractive sports equipment and to get into exercise. Again, well, in connection with nutrition, he also mentioned that public eating places would rapidly increase. That this had a connection with the family too, as more and more people ate out. Eating at home would become less important.
Wow.
People would be less dependent on their kitchens at home.
Wow.
And then this also connected to convenience foods being made widely available. Things like you could pop into the microwave. Whole meals would be available prefixed. And of course, we've now seen this in some pretty good ones.
Hungry
But this whole
Man?
different approach to eating out and to previously prepared meals being eaten in the home
How
was
sadistic is this, Layla?
predicted at the time to be brought about. Convenience foods. And the convenience foods, though, would be part of the hazard. Anybody who was lazy enough to want the convenience foods rather than fixing his own also better be energetic enough to exercise.
Yeah, seriously.
Because if he was too lazy to exercise and too lazy to fix his own food, then he didn't deserve to live very long. This was all presented as sort of a moral judgment about.
Whoa, moral judgment? They're judging us? You can't just do whatever you want and it doesn't matter because it's cool, it's fine.
I wouldn't think they'd do that.
What? So the people who run this world believe in morality and judgment? Whoa.
They're holier than thou? They believe they're better than us and they can cast judgment on us?
Wow.
I never would have thunk.
Wow. Like, people should suffer these consequences because they're immoral. They're lazy. Wow.
It's unreal. Yeah, see how they justify it too? They twist things. Wild.
So I modded you guys up so you can share whatever it is.
Got it. On it.
Okay. This is crazy.
Mind-blowing, right?
Crazy. Like, I'm blown away legitimately because I've never in my life thought they would think about, okay, we need to make athletic gear more popular and like all the accessories more popular, and that's a direct result of like the food supply being poisoned. Like, wow.
It's so sadistic how it's all tied together, like synergistically. It's so wild. Perfectly.
Yeah.
People and what they should do with their energies. People who are smart, who would learn about nutrition, and who are disciplined enough to eat right and exercise right are better people and are the kind you want to live longer.
Yeah.
Somewhere along in here, there was also something about accelerating the onset of puberty. And this was said in connection with health, and later in connection with education, and connected to accelerating the process of evolutionary change.
Wow. Okay, so we've already seen that happening. The acceleration in puberty. Like, that's definitely happening. Skylo Bones calls out, yeah, we're all pieces of garbage. I'm gonna have to go to the gym after this.
That's hilarious.
Oh, great. Okay,
and
so he
the
dropped.
idea was that if
he dropped the Discord link in the chat, so
I would click it, folks. I would join if you know it's good for you.
Yeah.
Pretty dope over there. It's our digital speakeasy.
Yeah, I'm a moderator there too, so we're gonna be posting stuff, talking about stuff, sharing stuff, whatever, you know.
Blowing that place to the ground as well.
Yeah. Trying not to get banned. Like I did
that's
on
the cool
TikTok.
part about Discord. Oh my gosh, Layla got her first ban last night.